Hi, everybody. I'm James Bennet from The Atlantic. Welcome to the last panel of CityLab. We have a terrific group here whom I'm going to introduce in a second, but I wanted to say a word at the outset about the framing of this particular issue, the kind of ferocious, surprisingly ferocious, for those of us who aren't in the business, competition internationally and nationally for the entertainment business. It really is a relatively recent phenomenon. It started with the Canadians in the 90s, beginning to offer incentives for television, particularly in film, to relocate up there. But the impact has been pretty profound. There are now about 40 states that offer incentive programs of some sort, and a number of foreign governments. And according to the LA Times, in LA County, feature film production has fallen by half since 1996. And the share of TV pilot production has fallen 73% since 2007. And the cumulative effect of that has been that California has lost about 16,000 entertainment jobs that paid on average about $98,000. What it means is that TV shows like Breaking Bad are now made in New Mexico. Iron Man 3 gets made in North Carolina. The Great Gatsby, that most American of stories, was actually made in Australia. Even something like Battle Los Angeles winds up getting shot in Shreveport and Baton Rouge. Louisiana last year was the location for 18 of 108 feature films versus 15 in California. And outside of LA and New York, actually, the richest union local for technical film workers is now in New Orleans. And most famously, maybe New York lured The Tonight Show back to Manhattan with a tax credit that was valued at about $20 million. There's a certain karmic justice there, rough karmic justice, because, of course, The Tonight Show used to be in New York before it moved to Burbank in 1972. And, in fact, the story is told that the film industry got its start in Hollywood originally 100 years ago because filmmakers didn't want to pay Thomas Edison the patents for his cameras, and they moved out to the West Coast to avoid doing that. Anyway, California is fighting back. Mayor Garcetti made it a priority when he came into office, and California recently increased its own incentive program from $100 million to $330 million a year. Okay, to talk about this whole set of related issues, we have immediately to my left is Kathy Garmezy. She's the Associate Executive Director for Government and International Affairs of the Directors Guild of America. She's in charge of all the Guild's work on legislation and regulation at the federal, state, and city level, and also handles international relations for the Guild. To her left is Amy Lemisch, who is the Executive Director of the California Film Commission and led the fight to increase the incentive that I just described a moment ago. She was originally appointed by Arnold Schwarzenegger and then reappointed by Jerry Brown, and actually has a background in film production herself, working for many years in Penny Marshall's film production company, I believe. To her left is Katherine Oliver, the leader of Bloomberg Associates, which is the philanthropic consultancy founded by Mayor Bloomberg. She focuses now on advising cities on using media and technology to improve their government services, but she knows a great deal about this subject, having served from 2002 to 2013 under Mayor Bloomberg as New York's Commissioner of the Office of Media and Entertainment. She transformed the city's entertainment sector during that period and grew it into a $7.1 billion industry that generates, I think, 130,000 jobs now in the city of New York. Jay Roewe, 30 years, more than 30 years of experience producing film and television. In fact, I think one of your early roles was on a pilot for Beverly Hills 90210. Was that filmed here?
It was actually in LA, yeah.
He's done everything from news to music videos to feature films, and is now the Senior Vice President at West Coast Productions for HBO, overseeing the production of all TV series for the network. He also manages worldwide film and television incentives for HBO productions. Okay, long setup. My apologies for that. Now move to the conversation from the group. And Katherine, I'd love it. Maybe we could start with you. the New York Times said a couple of years ago that they did the accounting, and they said it's about $1.5 billion in total tax breaks now nationally for the entertainment industry. And my question is, why this industry? Is it a particularly effective jobs generator? Is it one that's particularly mobile and easier to bring in? Or is it just people want to be associated with the glamour?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here today, and it's great to be reconnected with people who I worked so closely with over the last 12 or 13 years, so it's great to be reconnected. But, the film industry is a great business for a city. It not only employs a lot of people, or has the potential to employ a lot of people, but it's a great marketing tool for a city. In New York, about 130,000 New Yorkers work in film and television. Another 80,000 work on Broadway and live theater. And it represents the creative community at its best. And it's very visible. And it's a great way, when you look at New York and you look at Sex and the City and now Girls, look at what those shows have done to promote our city. We had 55 million tourists visit New York last year, and we don't have the data to correlate the tourists coming to New York because of a movie or a TV show, but there was a lot of anecdotal evidence to support that. And so if we can use these mediums to attract more jobs, keep jobs, support the creative community, which is seen as very desirable in cities, but also do your part to support tourism and the ancillary businesses, that's a home run. There are probably 4,000 ancillary businesses in New York City that benefit from film. So it's not only about having Sarah Jessica Parker or Lena Dunham working in our city. They're using the florist in Flushing, Queens. They're using the dry cleaner in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. They're staying at hotels. Hopefully they're living in New York. They've moved, and now we have a very vibrant full-time community because of our efforts. But they're going to schools. They're eating in restaurants. And so that's wonderful economic impact. And it's also a great way for the world to see that a city is open for business and that they're supporting the creative economy.
James, we've seen incentives here in the way that Kathy talked about in New York. It clearly can have an impact. And one of the things that really shocked us this year, or actually the last couple of years, was the impact of Game of Thrones. And I think this was a very interesting situation where we went into Belfast, Northern Ireland, where there actually wasn't a lot of history of filming because of the disturbances politically and so on and so forth. And with Game of Thrones there, we have transformed Belfast, and we've transformed Northern Ireland in a way that I don't think any of us expected. And it wasn't why we went there in the first place, was to change a city and a country, but after 5 years, the worldwide recognition of that show has put Northern Ireland on the map in a way globally that I don't even think the leaders of the country expected when we first walked in there. And that was more happy. I mean, that wasn't the goal. The goal was to find a good place to shoot.
But do you need to be in Belfast to shoot Game of Thrones or in New York to shoot Girls? Because CSI New York is shot in Los Angeles, right?
And you can tell.
Amy, do you want to jump in?
Right. Well, I want to get back to your original question, which was, it was sort of an all of the above, these cities or states or countries. It is, as Katherine said, a big job generator. It supports small businesses. We had one show, actually moved here from Rhode Island, and I remember the producer speaking at an event, and they said they used 1,200 different vendors for that one series. So the florist, the dry cleaner, the lumber, the grocer, it trickles down into so many different aspects of the local economy. It's also highly mobile because everything, you have your equipment all in trucks that you can drive and park anywhere, and you can do it anywhere. And it is, but I also think that these regions do like the glamour that comes with it, and they do like that their restaurants are being frequented by movie stars. Sometimes that happens. What Jay's talking about, and that you're talking about the tourist boost that they're getting from your show.
That's, besides the economic, the tourism boost is what it's just another thing.
It doesn't always happen, but when it does, it's amazing. I mean, we had that in Santa Barbara with that movie Sideways. They're having their 10-year anniversary, and they're doing a whole big, yet another round of tourist-related events Just piggybacking on the success of that
And
movie.
businesses, there's Sex in the City bus tours, there were Soprano bus tours, and now, as the anniversaries of these shows are celebrated, like with this film, that creates an opportunity for restaurants and bars to have, special events or packages for the fan base, which is huge. The other thing that is really important is the educational factor. And we've talked a lot yesterday, the conversations were centering about youth employment, creating new jobs. We talk about STEM. We like to talk about STEAM, putting the arts in science and technology and math. You're going to get kids excited about learning about these things through media and arts. And we worked on a lot of workforce training programs in New York City, the Ghetto Film School in the South Bronx. Technology has changed. It's now, it enables, young people in the South Bronx to create art in the palm of their hand, distribute it in a nanosecond, and it's a great way to get youth excited about learning and excited about creating, and also being on a career track that could be in a very lucrative industry. And so we've seen that over and over again in New York, and proud of the accomplishments that we made there.
I think the whole incentive, rise of incentives in the last 10 to 15 years, especially within the United States, but also abroad, I think until that incentive became available, people didn't quite realize how mobile our industry is, because there's a Hollywood sign in the Hollywood Hills, and there's studios, and you see the pictures of many of them on the logos when the film comes on the screen and all. But in fact, Hollywood really is wherever somebody has put down a production, because the essence of Hollywood is the creative process and is that production. And I think that's what people from other municipalities and all have sort of seen and learned, that people weren't as aware of a while ago.
Let me ask, Jay, if you could give us the example, go back to your example of Game of Thrones, and when you were thinking about citing that, you said you didn't go to Belfast in the hope of creating some sort of global phenomenon there, but how did you make that decision? What sort of factors do you weigh when you're faced with...
The decision of Game of Thrones is like every project. We get a script, the creative people present us a script, and we say, where are we going to put this production? And the way that I like to talk about it is that a television or film production is a business. And when all of a sudden you take away maybe the glamour for just a minute and think about it as a business, it's like the entrepreneur who walks in the door. I'm the venture capitalist sitting there. You're presenting a business to me, a concept for business, and I'm sitting and trying to figure out where am I going to set up that business? Because that's really what every film is. So we will look at the script, and now, because of the incentives, first and foremost, I want to say creatively, where does this work creatively? But with the incentives now out there, it gives me more options to play with. So in the case of something like Game of Thrones, is there some place in the US to do this? We looked at Canada, we looked at Australia, we looked at Eastern Europe. And after a lot of research and looking at where would you have actors wanting to live and come back to, and so on and so forth, we discovered this little oasis, Northern Ireland, by talking to some European producers. So it was a process, and that process is every project goes through, and I'm always weighing out the business side of things. Is there an incentive? And it isn't always about the cheapest place to shoot, but if there's an incentive that helps me with the budget, that's a great thing. Is there infrastructure there? Are there crews? Is there a community? And honestly, do the mayor, does the governor, or in the case of Northern Ireland, the first week we were there, we met with the first prime minister, and he had us to dinner, and he wanted us there. And when the mayor of a city reaches out, and we've had that in cities around here, or the governor, it says from the top down they're going to be supportive. And I know when I bring a business into a state or a country, when the people at the top are supportive, that sends a very strong message to me, a really strong message. In the case of New York, having what Bloomberg and Katherine did there, from the top down in New York, and New York, it's a city that's a busy place. When the people at the top want that, that becomes a factor. So all of those things we take into account, and then you put them into the pot, and you see what comes out, and you evaluate it on all those factors. So that's what the process is that we go through.
The customer service piece cannot be overstated. It is so important, and understanding first of all what the customer needs and wants, giving them access to the locations, and being supportive. It's much easier in government to say, no, you can't do that. But we were really looking at this sector as a business that we wanted. We wanted to let it grow, and we wanted to send a strong signal to the industry that we understood their business needs and we were going to cater to them. And so I think that, we always looked at, the tax credit game. There's always going to be another territory that offers a better tax credit. Currency fluctuations are also taken into consideration,
another issue.
and we can't control that. But what we can control is the image of our office and the customer service that we provide. And so we made our Office of Film, Theater, and Broadcasting the one-stop shop. So instead of a film production coming in and sending them to 10 different city agencies, they came to us. We did the running around. And again, with technology, we were able to put a lot of that online. We put our permit online. We came a long way from working on electric typewriters in 2002 when I started at the agency, and really accelerated the film permitting process because time is money. So, you don't want to lose your staff on a show waiting 3 hours to 3 days to get permits. You want to accelerate that whole process. And you don't want to be told, no, you can't go to that location. So it really is working with the productions and really giving them keys to the city, if you will, and making that investment.
But these are mobile businesses. I mean, that's what every single production is. They invited me to North Island to actually speak to the follow-up to the GA conference, to a business conference. And again, I sat with business people. I didn't sit with media people. And we talked about the business aspect of what we do, because it's hundreds of jobs, millions of dollars, and potentially we would be bringing a business to your city, town, and state, and country.
But I think it's important. I think the business part is critical. There's no question. And we are an industry that is a combination of creativity and business, and I think it's the combination that's so attractive to cities, because you cannot get away from the mystery of the creativity part of it. That's the ultimate kind of puzzle that people want to touch and feel.
So then, Amy, how does California fight back in this environment? You still have half the film entertainment jobs in the U.S., I think, and in fact, amazingly, 94% of those jobs are just in LA County alone.
It's more than half.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but so California came in with their own incentive to sort of counteract the flood of productions that were leaving back in 2009. So I've been administering that program since then. And then I think what you're referring to is just earlier this month, the governor signed legislation that expanded and extended our program for another 5 years. It's funded now. It went from $100 million a year to $330 million a year. That will kick in July. And I'll be administering that here as well, and we anticipate a big increase in production as a result.
But what's your pitch or your argument when you're trying to hold on to or keep?
Well, I think it's a little easier for me because if you talk to Jay and other producers,
we love shooting in California and Los
tell
Angeles
you
and San Francisco.
That this is their first choice. They would rather just be able to do it here. I mean, assuming creatively it works. I mean, if they didn't need a castle somewhere, which, we're not going to have the same kind of locations that he's necessarily able to get in Northern Ireland. But for the most part, we can match most locations. We have the best infrastructure. We have the most plentiful crews. You don't have to bring anything in. We have it all. And you can never underestimate the value of sun. 315 sunny days a year. You don't have to deal with cover sets here, which is a big issue for productions on location.
But the other thing is, we have members who haven't been with their families for years. You have to leave your family to feed your family nowadays. And so if you have a choice about can you be home with your family and see your kids every night or be off somewhere else, it's sort of not a choice, really.
But it's also to the credit, the good work of the directors and the set designers that they can make anything.
And absolutely.
And, and also decisions are driven by talent. Sarah Jessica Parker insisted that Sex and the City be made in New York. She said the city was a character. It was the fifth girl. We have The Good Wife now is shot in New York. It's set in Chicago, but every frame is made in New York because Juliana Margulies wants to be there. Boardwalk Empire, The Atlantic City Boardwalk is in Vinegar Hill, Brooklyn. It's over and again because the talent has, not often, but there are certain, they have that kind of
All of those
power.
things are factors at times.
It's one of the things that puzzled me, why the talent doesn't ask the question, what am I doing in Shreveport? Not that Shreveport's not a wonderful place. I like it. But
They do.
They do ask that question.
They do,
Believe
but-
me, they ask that question. Or for any city. I mean, New Yorkers want to be in New York, and people, everybody wants to be. People ask that question, but the incentive, they have to go where the work's going to go.
Is there a backlash building against this kind of incentive program now, though? It seems like a number of states, Nevada is one, state of Maryland recently had a big fight over whether to renew the incentive program for House of Cards.
Which they did.
Minnesota, which I guess...
North Carolina is scaling
North
back.
Carolina.
Yeah.
So are people rethinking the wisdom of this approach?
I think that everyone's always analyzing these programs. I mean, we were talking about it. Every state or city is going to look at their own. Their Department of Finance is going to dig deep and see what is the return on investment for my state. And I think that's what's going on in a lot of these places. And I don't think that it's necessarily right for every state in the United States to try and build up their own infrastructure and be the next Hollywood. But for certain places, it's been incredibly successful. Like Louisiana's not going away. Mm-hmm. That's the number. Louisiana and Georgia, I guess, are neck and neck for the third production center in the U.S. now. They're not going away. They are in this. They're building stages. They're recruiting crews. So for them, it worked, and it's worth it to them. But maybe another state like Maryland is rethinking it.
James, the way that I like to think about it these days, because I talk to people around the world about this, is that we're probably in the second or third generation of incentives. And in the same way that California, I think, was incredibly intelligent about saying, well, what's the situation? What's going on? Let's kind of redesign our program to adjust the needs. Now, the issues in California are different than the issues in New York or different than the issues in Illinois. But if you look around the country right now, and I think this is with any economic issue, times change. What's your economic situation? What kind of industries do you want here? What infrastructure? There are places around the country where there's a history of infrastructure. So I think the smart states and towns and countries are looking at things and say, what's appropriate for us? Mm-hmm. Don't overstate it. Don't give it. You have to adjust to what's right for that state. And having 10 productions in your state may not be proper, but a place like Maryland or South Carolina, 2, 3, 4 productions can bring a lot of attention in a very strong way, and probably shouldn't have 10 productions there. But I think it's about the states and the people in the legislators and the economic development people looking at this like a business to say, well, what can this business bring to us? Let's design a program that's appropriate for our state.
And, I was just going to say that, in the Bloomberg administration, early on, Mike Bloomberg had said the importance was to diversify New York City's economy. And, it was post 9/11, so the first order of business was to make the city safe, but to really diversify the economy and not focus totally on Wall Street, but to look at all the other sectors. Look at arts, look at culture, look at entertainment, and get people excited about coming to New York. And I remember it was 2008, and the headlines, the banks were collapsing around us, and here we were at Kaufman Astoria Stages, breaking ground on the third new stage at Kaufman. And I remember, Mike was just shaking his head and saying, this is an industry that's expanding. We can't even keep up with the demand. Kaufman has got to make an investment
Trying to
build
find
a new
stage space in New York is so hard.
And this is a growing sector. And so it was really important to look at the other aspects of city life where there were opportunities for growth. And that's the story that I told, would tell to neighborhoods when there was pushback. Can't park my car, I don't want another film in my community, that we were really saying these are real New Yorkers. These are New Yorkers that are hard at work at a time when other industries are challenged. This is a growing business, and you should support it.
If these incentives went away tomorrow nationally, what would it mean for the industry and for consumers? Would there be fewer TV shows made and fewer movies made? Would ticket prices be higher? What would the effect be? Or is it kind of irrelevant?
They went away globally, not nationally.
Yes,
they went away globally, and it was just level.
A level playing
First of all, California would get a lot more production. Right. But I think you might see the production value go down because everybody would have to trim their budgets. I don't know that the volume of there's so much original content now for so many different cable and direct-to-internet TV models, but I think would you agree?
Yeah, I mean,
the production value is going to suffer.
We need to make the amount of programming to satisfy the appetite of the people out there. There's no question about that. But then I would look at it from a slightly different economic standpoint, and all of a sudden, well, maybe the exchange rate issue is more important now. Or maybe the infrastructure there is more important. Or actually, what does it cost for lumber in this city as opposed to this city? So I would still have economic factors, but they would be different ones. And so I might end up with a slightly different place where I'm shooting. But, people don't ask. They want it to be the best quality it can. And it's my job to figure that out wherever it gets shot. So the expectations will still be right there.
I mean, the industry's always going to need to figure out how to make up for places where revenue is reduced. The piracy of films has definitely led to the diminution of films being made, making it all the more important to make films on certain budgets and find ways to cut costs. So I think it's correct. The volume will still be there, but different decisions will be made. You'll have to weigh different things, but it's still got to be some kind of a business decision in the end.
If we only have a couple minutes left, so I'd like to do a lightning round and ask each of you this question. If you're talking to a young person graduating from film school who wants to get into the movie business on the production side, where would you tell that kid to move, domestically or internationally? Where should they go?
I'll start with a real story because one of my best friends growing up, son was going to college in Florida, wanted to get in the film business. He was down there 3 years ago. He graduated, started working around Florida. All of a sudden, the Florida incentive went away. And I said, if you want to work in the film business, I'm telling you right now, move to Georgia. And he has not missed a day since he moved there. So, obviously, and I have a son that just graduated too, people still love coming to California. There's so many opportunities here. But, this is an industry of wanting to train people and so on and so forth. So go where the work is. And, and he's been working every day since.
New York is it. I have to. We created and endorsed Made in New York, and, I'm a New Yorker, and now I've got the great privilege of going to other cities around the world and trying to scale some of the things that we did in New York. But I still, New York is in a global city, and, there's just so many access, and we've really created over the last 12 to 13 years a sizable market there, unbelievable film schools. But, now because of technology, young filmmakers, they don't have to learn a lot of these skills in school. They can just go out and do it on their own. And there's so many after-school programs and different not-for-profits and cultural organizations that support their craft. And they should learn by doing.
So, Amy, why shouldn't the kid go to Georgia? If only because there's less competition.
Why should he not have come to L.A.? I would say
my son came back to L.A., so
there's still plenty of opportunities for people starting out in entry-level positions. There's so many different. Whether you want to do the creative side is based here for the most part as well. All the major studios are based here. So anything from creative to learning how to be a camera assistant to learning how to do editing or post-production or anything, you can certainly find opportunities here.
Kathy, do you want the last word on this?
Well, I think I would reflect the fact that I work for the Directors Guild, and I would say go where the greatest creativity is.
And where's that, though?
I think it's in California, New York, primarily. London.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much. Appreciate your remarks, and thank you all. Jamie Miller will be out in a moment to wrap things up for us.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Jamie Miller.
Hi, I'm Jamie Miller. I'm a vice president at the Aspen Institute and lead from our end on this project. And I want to start by thanking you all for being here. It's been such a wonderful group, and we really hope that you have found the content valuable, but I also hope that you have had interesting conversations outside of the content, made relationships that might be useful to your work in all of your cities, which will ultimately help the rest of us. So thank you for all being here and for being such great contributors. I also would like to thank our fantastic sponsors. I hope you've all gotten to meet them. The underwriters have been GM, JP Morgan Chase, Hitachi, HP, McKinsey and Company, CH2M Hill, Palantir, and the J. Paul Getty Trust. Thank you all very much. I'll echo Jim in thanking our other wonderful partners. I think we've created something really great together, something that all of our teams can be proud of. And with that, I'll send you on your way. I wish you all safe travels to wherever you're going, which is all across the world. And we hope you'll stay in touch. Thank you.